We're live anyway. Oh, hello. Out of the microphone. Welcome, everyone. How are you? This is Christianne from the Christianne Wolff Podcast show. Very excited to be here today with parenting coach and best-selling author Madeleine Stanimeros. Hello, Madeleine. Madeleine's also my cousin, and I've done the podcast show with a few family members over the last few weeks. We had Catherine on a couple of weeks ago, who is an organisational expert. It's both our cousins. We have Michelle, my sister, who's your cousin, who is health expert. And now we've got Madeleine. This is so awesome. So Madeleine, I'm so thrilled to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on for weeks because as a parent and as friends with many parents and clients with many parents, there's a lot of people struggling at the moment. Or there's a lot of people confused, or there's just so many changes going on, and in all areas of all our lives, but particularly with parenting, because we're homeschooling and we're living with our kids 24/7, and it's like this whole new environment. So I'm super excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to ask you millions of questions. First of all, tell me about your book, because you're the author of a book called Parenting for Life, aren't you?
Okay. So I've got 5 kids of my own, and then I think we hit a bit of an epiphany. One of ours is on the Asperger spectrum. I think we were just looking for some extra tools that just weren't in the mainstream places. The things that deal with sibling rivalry, the things that deal with sort of growing their responsibility and the way they speak to each other. Without the naughty step, without the tools that I didn't find were relational. So about probably 12, 14 years ago, we went on a bit of a kind of there's got to be something else hunt. And it sort of evolved from there. We were asked to do parenting courses. Lots of parents sort of came and sorted us out and said, how have you managed this? How have you overcome that? So we ended up just sort of advising people and supporting people. And then I was doing courses and was asked to speak at sort of conferences and events and stuff. And really not, I'm not a psychoanalyst. I'm not, I really am just a mum who's done a huge amount of work on myself and in this area.
Yeah.
So people started saying, where's the book? Where's the book? And particularly there was a massive sort of flurry of interest in myself and a girl that I work with called Caroline, and she's a counsellor to teenagers. So we would go off and do talks at schools in the evenings together. And it was, where's the book? Where's the book? So I wrote the book. I can show you what the book looks like. And it was rather different because it's it's beautiful, actually. It's a hardback and it's fully illustrated. And I found that, because I obviously have a lot of mums that are clients, that they're saying, I've got a stack of books by my bed and they're gathering dust. And they're tomes. And a mum who's overwhelmed at the end of the day cannot sit through a load of black and white print and inform herself. So you could pick a chapter, but you could also pick any single page and you would come away with a tool. It's designed like that.
Amazing. And this, on your life journey as a parent, there's obstacles and things that come up all the time, isn't it? And I love that it's called Parenting for Life, because we are parents for life, aren't we?
We are, well spotted. Yeah, we are. In fact, we'll be parenting adults for an awful lot longer than we'll be parenting children.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I'm not looking forward to that part of it.
You're not quite there yet.
No, I'm not. So I wanted to talk to you today about the whole lockdown situation, because you have homeschooled your children, haven't you? Did you homeschool all 5 of them?
They've all been homeschooled through the bulk of their primary years, but they've all also done school. So it's fascinating. Homeschooling, the whole scene is changing enormously. When I started 20 years ago, you were considered a bit of a sort of nutcase, really. And also people just assumed that you sort of sat under an apple tree and did a bit of maths if you felt like it. And they would ask me things like, are you a vegetarian and do you have chickens? There's obviously a perception around home educators that was not accurate in my case at all. We were doing Latin, we were doing the classics. So yes, I've homeschooled for 20 years, but they have all had an experience of school. Yeah. So bit of a mishmash. And we kept Henry right through to, year 9. And actually, he'd already done his Mandarin GCSE at that stage. So off he went. And then after that, we decided to put them in when... Sorry, the dog wants to get out.
Oh, don't worry. My dog's
Hold
always...
on, audience.
Yeah. Hello, everybody jumping on. Hi, Olivia. Hello, Brendan. Hello, Jacqueline and Sean and Ashley and Sharon. How you all doing? Good to see you. Don't worry, my dogs do that all the time when I do lives. It's just, they love it, don't they? They love interrupting.
She usually wants to be with me the whole time, but there is a bone in the garden, so.
Very clever.
So yes, they've been educated at home on and off with me, but we've also had school experiences too. So I'm a big fan of school, and I'm a big fan of homeschool.
So just one question. Are you mental? Like, how do you, I mean, I
That's
did
a good question. Yes.
I did.
Mentally stretched.
I didn't admire how much it was until Angelique, I just thought, oh yeah, that sounds quite nice, homeschooling. But yeah. I mean, particularly because Robbie and I both work, I've actually really loved aspects of it, but then I'm also like, oh my God, I can't wait for her to go back because she's an only child and because she really needs the stimulation of other children as well. I think that more than anything, but just the whole organizational aspect of it as well. So
yes,
what
interesting to hear that you've enjoyed parts of it. That's nice.
I've really loved. I think it's given us a different kind of bond because we don't normally do loads of work together. We'll do homework, but on really different subjects, and it's been fun. I mean, the first week we couldn't stop laughing because I wasn't very good at schools. Half the time I was just like, I have no idea. I mean, she asked me something this morning about fractions and I just fell about laughing. I was just like, I don't know. But
that's so funny. That's the thing I've been asked most about, or that has come up in conversation most about. I'm not a guru, but I have found some good ways to do fractions.
Right. So what are your top tips then on homeschooling?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, Christianne? Because I feel for you guys. You've been dumped in it with no notice at all. I mean, I have the privilege of thinking ahead, planning the whole year, getting my books in, getting my stuff in, chatting with the children, asking what they want to cover, being able to lead it with their interests. So the child who's on the spectrum was always fascinated with one thing at one time, and that was his obsession, a bit like your brother was when he was younger. He was always obsessed with one thing, wasn't he? I'm not saying he was on the spectrum, but that kind of
but his son is
focused interest. And so we would set it all around the Titanic one year and all around the Star Wars the next year, whereas you've just been landed in it, and the variance is enormous. I've got friends who are being massively supported by the school to such a degree that they're finding skills in their children that they didn't know they had. And other schools who are going, relax, don't worry. And then I've got friends who work and they're like, what do you mean relax and sit in the garden? I don't have that privilege.
I was totally the same. I was like, please stop telling me to relax and not worry, because I will. I will just say, go and swim in the pool all day. I need structure, I need something to do.
Structure. And I think structure is the absolute key. And that was the best thing I could say to people at the beginning is set your benchmarks fairly low. Put your structure as a high priority. Allow yourself days where it all goes wrong, and pick one thing that they can come out of this with. I think to you, I suggested touch typing. So at least they can go, well, I learned that in lockdown. Kept up with a bit of maths and English, but gosh, look what I can do that I couldn't do before. So that's quite a fun way to do it. But you're right. It's about structure.
So what did you do with more than one child then? I mean, I've only got Angelique, so I really shouldn't be complaining. But how do you kind of teach more than one?
Yes, there's pros and cons to that. I never found it difficult to teach more than one because a home-educated child will be quite a self-learner. Okay. So Angelique can come to you and go, what does this word mean? Whereas I'm afraid they know that they'll have to look that up and resource themselves.
Right.
You have the advantage also that the older ones can, listen to the younger ones reading, and there's investment on both sides. They've got each other. And then I would always have what I call the hot seat. So if they were struggling with something, they would come and sit in the hot seat and we would go through it, and off they'd go and finish whatever it was they were doing. And then we'd have things that we did together, and we particularly tried to do things that you wouldn't necessarily do at school. So we would have musical appreciation, and we whack on one of the classics and dance around the kitchen and and that sort of thing. I would say the absolute hardest thing for me, and I think this is what a lot of home educators are finding at the moment, is when you've got a toddler that actually doesn't need a formal education yet, and you're trying to educate, and you've got this poor toddler bored out of their brain. So that was probably my biggest juggle when I had toddlers behind. So that, again, that structure, isn't it? Getting out and about.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So it's not like you were sitting down with them all the time. Did you sort of say, okay, this time you do on your own, go on the hot seat if you need me, and then this time we do it together? Was that how you planned your day out?
Yes. Yeah, so we did we always get out really early in the morning and have a lovely long walk, and then we go 8:30 till midday with one break in the middle for cut fruit. And then after that, there was what we call own work, which I suppose is what you call homework. But, if they're doing history, they might have to be learning some of their characters. If they're doing Macbeth, they might have to be learning their lines, tables. We focused a lot on memory. So they learned all the flags, all the kings and queens. And that's been a fantastic tool for them when it came to GCSEs, because it really developed them. Well, all of that goes on in the afternoon. And so I'm less involved. And in the morning, I'm just there as sort of people are coming and going, can you help me with my English? Can you help me with my maths? Yeah. I did find that by the time 12 o'clock came, we'd have lunch and then we'd go out to a park or something. And then I was like, I'm zoning out. So I'd fall asleep with the baby for an hour or something.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Amazing. And do you feel that homeschooling has given them, I know you had your own reasons for doing it, but do you feel it's also given them some sort of advantage as well?
I suppose there are advantages on both sides. We have quite a sociable family, so I don't really miss out on the social side. I'd say the advantages are being quite responsible about their own work, being self-starters. Yeah, I would say that's been a massive advantage. It's probably that you can get so much of the work done in the morning and have your afternoons free. Yeah. And actually, my reasons for home educating weren't half as noble as other people. And it was interesting because recently the council put together a document. There are so many home educators now. Our council just cannot keep up. So they've decided that they needed to do a blanket document to give to all new home educators. Wow. And they asked a few of us if we would contribute and sort of be part of that. And when they listed all their reasons for home education, I said, I'm not on there. And he said, well, why did you home educate? I said, I just fancied it and I love it. And he's like, so not religious, not, anti-school, no. Can't help you there. Just love it. And I really have loved it, Christiane. I really, really still do.
I do understand why. I mean, I was half joking about calling you mental, but you've got 5 children, so I'm like, that takes a lot of commitment, doesn't it? And a lot of structure, which I'm not very good at. So then,
you must be good at it. Look at what you juggle in your life.
Well, I think just because I do juggle a lot, it's just one more thing that I have to do. So for me, it was just like, oh God, how am I going to fit this in? And we are doing it, but I wouldn't want to do it with 4 more children, put it that way.
Okay. Give that a miss.
So then also it's not just about the home education at the moment. We are living as a family 24/7. So, that affects romance, it affects couple time, it affects
you've not got a lock on your bedroom door.
When loads of people are having sex in the countryside around here, it's really bizarre. I've come across it 3 times.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. The other day, Pablo went up to someone and sniffed their bum. Having sex.
That's through their moment.
I was like, oh my God, what's he barking at? And there's this couple.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But anyway,
I hope it's to come to that for you and Robbie.
But it affects lots of things, doesn't it? Because we are in each other's area, and everyone's got different size houses. Some people are in apartments from really close proximity to people aren't even allowed to go outside at all. So
Yeah.
what do we do about that? It's a really broad question, but
yeah, it's so difficult, isn't it? And I really agree with you. I find it interesting. I find it interesting that they often say, "Oh, this is a leveler," and I think, look, it might be a leveler in that our country's up against the same thing. But if you're in a high-rise flat and
yeah,
you're someone who perhaps has got a garden and a pool, there's nothing level about that.
no,
You're absolutely right. Some people are really struggling and trying to hold down jobs.
yeah,
So, what do we do about that? I mean, it's tricky, and then of course you've got some people who are simply frontline nurses and doing their best to juggle.
yeah,
I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is I get slightly frustrated by the interpretation of the law. So I don't know how it is over there in Portugal, but over here the law was actually that you could only go out if it was for a reasonable reason, and that was quickly interpreted as essential, which was poppycock. That just wasn't true. And so people didn't have the nerve to go out in their cars, to go and find a nice country walk and let their children run free. The other thing is, it said that you could only meet with one other person from outside of your family, i.e., you may meet a friend and go for a walk up the hill. And people interpreting that as you mustn't see anybody between sort of here and when it's all over. So I felt sort of sad for people that the interpreter and the fear of people out there who were sort of overlaying that and going, don't go out and you're all mad and you're all rotten, you're killing everybody by doing that. And you think, I will meet far less people if I drive to our Daisybank Woods and go for a big walk up in the hills than I will if I go around to my local park. So
yeah,
I would say, look at the letter of the law and get yourselves out as much as you possibly can. It's
yeah,
beautiful at the moment.
yeah, yeah. You're having amazing weather, aren't you? Almost
Oh,
similar
we
to here,
are.
actually. Yeah.
Gorgeous, yeah.
So
But we
what?
don't have a pool.
No, you've got a paddling pool, there, haven't
A
you?
spa. You got
Yeah.
a spa.
You got
It's not. Have you got a spa jacuzzi? Great big rubber thing. Anyway.
yeah, I do. I know. I've seen so many people buy them at the moment. They are the rage.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Mm.
funny. That's lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nicholas just got one.
That's you.
So
Another cousin.
get, getting our kids out as much as possible, then getting them the fresh air, getting them stimulation of being out. And what do we do within the household? I mean, one of the things I mentioned to you, in fact, you were one of the first people I contacted when I knew that we had to homeschool, because I was just like, okay, our life's going to change. I'm going to ask Madeleine's advice on how to do this. One of the things that we're having at the moment is that Angelique is on her iPad a lot. And before this, we would have, screen time and then off screen time, but we didn't really ever have to say it because there were so many other things she was doing and after school clubs. And, so I'd never really had to enforce it in a particularly strict way. But now I'm just like, oh man, because she's talking to all her friends on screen. She's on the school is screen. Then we all sit down and watch TV in the evening. It's screen, So, what would you suggest around the whole screen time thing?
Well, you're in a tricky situation. My older kids have all, well, Tom's gone back to uni, but 3 of the older kids have come back to live here. So Johnny has just got laid on entertainment the whole time and possibly isn't craving that screen interaction. But I do have friends who do have only children, and I suppose.
Right, here we go. I just told you.
And I suppose you do have to be flexible, but in the end, I suppose it's what any one parent is comfortable with. Whenever I do parenting coaching, I always try to set it within the culture of that family, and my family culture might not work for them. We do have screens, but they're very limited. I like them to sort of find ways to entertain themselves, but they've got siblings, so I think you're in a tough spot there. I would probably still limit the amount of social interaction they have on screen. I think we're told, they've got to be social the whole time or they'll lose their sociability. It's not actually true. One good chat with a friend a day, probably does the trick. And then it's just allowing them to be bored for long enough that they create play. I mean, Angelique's so creative, imaginative, isn't she?
That's brilliant. Yes.
I
Yeah.
think we're afraid of boredom. We're afraid of it, and we don't want to go through the pain barrier of pushing through that boredom and going, well, sweetheart, what are you going to do? Yeah.
I know, As a child myself, and you're only a few years older than me. I mean, in the 80s and 70s, I remember getting bored quite a lot. I remember going to my mum saying, I'm bored, and then I would have to go out and climb a tree or do some
Yeah.
arty things or crafty things. Yeah, and TV was pathetic when we were younger, wasn't it? There was
Oh,
only
the
four
trade test
channels.
transmission, wasn't it? Most of the time. That girl with the panda or whatever it was.
I remember those awful black and white, they were open university programs on TV.
Yes, they were, weren't they? And also, generationally, we wouldn't have been allowed to watch TV in the day. That just wouldn't have happened.
No.
But the interesting thing is, you said then you did go and find art and you did go and climb a tree, but it required the boredom for you to get to that place. I think before they get to that place, we go, oh, we'll have a screen. And they never discover in themselves that actually they can do that. I mean, you see these kids are in a supermarket line and they can't do that without sort of being on their screen. And I think you miss smelling the roses around you, don't you? So there's a balance in there.
Yeah, no, that is such a good point. That's a really good point. So when you help people then because you go out into families and help them, what do they typically ask you to help them with? I know there'll be lots of reasons, but
You're right, but I think you probably can round it up. Actually, I don't see families, I only see parents.
right.
So Caroline will see the children and I will see the parents. And largely they will come because they've hit a wall. And normally it's they want the child to be doing or not doing something. And it's causing conflict. And they're starting to argue. They're starting to realize they're losing their relationship with their child. They're labeling them. They're saying things that they don't mean. And the child is stomping upstairs and banging the door. And so they'll go, come to me. Now, whether that's over a screen, whether that's over homework, whether that's over manners or sibling rivalry, ultimately, it just means there's a clash on the boundary wall where the parents put the boundary. The child is pushing back in a way the parent is wanting a few strategies to help them with that. And sometimes it's food issues, different stuff.
Right. So when your kids do push the boundaries, then what is there do you just have to teach everyone individually and listen to what their issues are, or have you got some kind of set two things that you go to?
I think I probably do. I mean, everything's case by case, isn't it? So the first thing I will always try and do is think, what's underneath all of this? Why are they anxious today, or why are they frustrated? Why are they kicking back? And we might say I think we often don't like children being angry, upset, or frustrated. So we try and solve and get in there and calm them down. I think, no, let's get it out on the table. What's really at the heart of this, darling? Why are you struggling with this? And so empathy would be my absolute first port of call, but within a boundary. So you're allowed to be angry. What you do with your anger, well, we have boundaries around that. So I never say, I mean, I hate the naughty step. There are certain things that I really can't bear, but I would say, you're welcome in the kitchen when you feel you can manage that. Otherwise, why don't you pop up to your room, take 10 breaths, and I'll be up shortly if you'd like to chat it through. So always pouring choices into that moment. What would you like to do? Because they want to believe they're cornered, they're stuck. The world has gone against them and nobody understands how bad it is for them. So that's your kind of victim corner. So I would get in there with empathy, and that just brings the amygdala down, gets the frontal lobe free to sort of be thinking and about cause and effect and logical plans. And then I'll come in with a choice. Well, what a victim, and I'm not saying a victim as in your child's a victim, but what a victim mentality can't bear is a choice, because it says actually you're not stuck. You've got some choices. So I'll go in with, what would you like to do about this? What would be your best outcome? And if you can't have that, what could, a good plan B be? And I don't know. Go, well, would you like me to make some suggestions? So it's about loosening them up, freeing them up. And then it's also about, having consequences in place when they're really acting outside of the family values. And consequences, not punishments, is something that I teach on a lot. In fact, one of my recent podcasts was on that. It's the one that I get asked about the most. Wow. And some people love it because they go, great, I've got another method to control my children. Brilliant, give me some consequences. And I'm like, hang on. Have you done empathy first? Have you listened? Have you given them choices? And okay, so it's time for a consequence. Well, a consequence has to be logical. It has to be connected to the behaviour. So, for example, if they're mucking about at the dinner table, it's no good taking away their bedtime story, because the two have nothing to do with each other. It's a bit like, if you don't put your bins out, the council don't turn your Wi-Fi off. They're just not, it's not logical. So I talk a lot about logical consequences and empowering parents, because empowered parents raise empowered children. So hard to put in a nutshell, but that would be my best effort.
It's so interesting, because as you were talking there, I run the body rescue plan groups, as you know, and I was just thinking, I can get quite a lot of that in the groups that I run as well initially, and I really try and nip it in the bud of people playing victims. So people saying, "Poor me, it's not fair," and I very quickly disallow that, because people love the attention of that, don't they? They sort of swarm in it. And what I do, the same as you, is say, okay, you've got choices here. Nothing is unsolvable. We can come to any resolution, and you can help any situation, but you can't just say nothing's going to work. So it's really amazing giving a child the opportunity to do that, so they don't turn into an adult that continues to do that as well, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. And I was chatting to a mum the other day, and she does everything for her children. I think she's got 3. And the reason she does everything, she doesn't want the argument. And I think, like you say, then you're going to raise a disempowered adult. Dare to have the clash. Conflict isn't the worst thing in the world. In fact, if you don't have conflict in the home, they won't learn conflict resolution. And as you say, coming to that person, your clients, for example, they might want to use can't instead of won't. And that can't might be because they were abused as a child and they've got weight issues, and that's their comfort. So you're coming with that empathy and going, I get that. That feels like a real mountain. But it doesn't mean you can't. It means you won't. And what are your choices in that space? And sometimes the choice is literally, I'm going to eat 2 calories less tomorrow, but at least, they're winning through on their power, aren't they?
Yeah, and it is all about power, isn't it? It's about being a powerful human being rather than a victim who has to go through life in that way. It's so interesting. So tell me about your book again and your podcast, because you have a podcast called The Courageous Mama, which comes out when? Is it every Friday?
Every Tuesday.
That comes out on Friday as well, don't you?
I do a snippet of it on Friday on Instagram, and that's also The Courageous Mama, and that's MUMMA, because I think there are a few around now. But that comes out on Friday, and you can just get a sense of it. So I'm doing love languages over a 2-week period. So I've just given a little snippet of that, and each week I bring people on who have. Do you know what love language is?
No, tell me. No.
Oh, okay. So there are 5 love languages. There's words, there's touch, there's time, there's acts of service, and so on. And we all orientate towards one. So, for example, I could turn up to your house and you've had a bad week, and I bring you a gift, and you're like, "Thanks."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Wow, that totally bounced off her. What's her love language?" And it might be actually, I wanted you to sit with me a while, or I needed your words of comfort. And you might give words of comfort to someone else, and they're like, actually, I need space, but if you'd have bought me a bunch of flowers. So it's understanding that about yourself, and then you can understand and actually start to notice that your children orientate towards, so you can sort of pour on the power in their difficult moments. So the book is...
Oh, we've lost Madeleine.
So they podcast everything. I mean, we are going to do a couple on home ed, and we're going to get an expert trainer in the next couple of weeks, and she is incredible at empowering parents. And then we've got one coming on who's going to do sort of post-birth urinary problems, and right through to empathy, consequences. It's pretty chill, but it's rich. It's full of really nourishing, rich stuff for parents. And so that's the podcast. And the book, which I'd love to give to your listeners if they would like, it's usually $19.99, but I can do it for 15 plus postage to your listeners if they would like to.
Yeah.
And the book covers all of those things in detail.
Have you got a website or a link to your book?
Yes, I have. I can give it to you for the show notes if you like. and they can come
Okay.
directly.
Just say what the website is as well.
Okay, that's the Courageous Mama as well.
Oh, it is the courageousmama.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Fabulous.
So yes, the book basically goes through, building up a child's self-esteem by things like belonging and traditions and so on. I go through the whole choices thing in quite some detail because some parents go, yeah, but I don't know what choices to give them in this moment. So there's lots of examples, lots of that. We talk about consequences. I talk about social media, everything. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's so relevant.
And then bits on the brain as well, sort of basic neuroscience of, oxytocin and some of the things that go on in our children's brains that throw them.
Yeah. And Madeleine and I, we were quite similar at school, weren't we? We were both very naughty.
Definitely.
Makes you a very good expert on how to parent.
I rather like that about you.
I rather like that about you. Yeah, exactly. But I think it does. I think it opens up empathy, doesn't it? When you've been very naughty and you've kind of done the rounds and you've been told off a lot, it does give you some insight as well, doesn't it?
Oh, you're so right, Christiane. And I think you're not naughty for no reason.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd even wrestle with labelling anybody naughty. We did naughty things, but in and of ourselves, we were actually relatively good, fun and easy kids. But we were probably frustrated. We were probably, there were times when actually things were just unfair. And I'd have loved someone to come and go, tell me how you feel.
Well, that never happened in the 70s and 80s.
Not really, no. Sister Kevin would get that hanger out and whack you around the head with it, and that was that, really. I don't think she'd get away with it now.
She was funny. We had a headmistress called Sister Kevin, but I don't even know how that even happened. I've never heard of a nun being called a man's name, but she was
not before since.
No. But yeah, schooling is so different now, isn't it? I mean, it's all about encouragement now. When we were at school, it was all about putting you down and making you feel stupid and saying you're not good enough. And yeah.
And there's a middle ground, isn't there? I mean, I laugh about Sister Kevin, and sure enough, I can remember when she whacked my friend Sarah Thompson around the head, and Sarah Thompson said, but in biology, you said that you can kill brain cells like that. And Sister Kevin said, well, you never had any anyway. That's just how they spoke to us, didn't they? But don't you think it's almost gone to the other end of the spectrum now, and the child power and the parent power is enormous? And I actually really feel, my eldest son is a teacher. He teaches Spanish. I think their hands are so tied. And actually, I wonder if we need to come back to a bit of a middle ground where the children aren't entitled to more than the teacher. It seems unfair.
Yeah, but I think through society we tend to swing a lot, don't we, from one pendulum to the other really strict, really, from the 50s to the 60s, and it tends to go all over the place and then back to a middle ground again. So yeah, I do agree with you. I think it has probably gone the other way a little bit too much. No, our schooling was hilarious. It was.
Did you go to Our Ladies as a junior school as well? Yeah. Did you have Mr. O'Toole?
I didn't have Mr. O'Toole, no. I had Mr. Stewart, who used to hit us every Monday morning. And I remember Lucinda and I, another cousin of us, we sat up like next to each other, and in front of us were these two boys called Edward and Elliot. And every Monday, whoever was the naughtiest, he'd make you put your arms up in the air. And then whoever was the naughtiest, they had to keep their arms up the whole lesson. And so it would always be Edward and Elliot. They were so naughty. I mean, Lucinda, we would cry with laughter because it was so funny watching these poor boys going through torture. But it was literally torture. It was awful.
There were some bizarre things. I have a particular memory of being in Sister Clotilde's class.
Oh, yeah.
And my friend Caroline Cottrell said that she wanted to go to the toilet. And Sister Clotilde said, not until after the Our Father. And halfway through the Our Father, we could all hear her weighing on the floor. And it was just awful. And when it was finished, Sister Clotilde turned around to her, had a rattle and made her clear it all up. Well, I mean, you'd put a nun like that in prison these days. But on the plus side, we had Mr. O'Toole, and he has been one of the greatest influences of my home education.
Wow.
He was just one of those, you know, you look back on your life and you have a few people who were just pivotally inspiring. He just broadened my horizons. He was amazing.
I never had him, actually. I left.
Oh, that's such a shame.
Yeah, I can't really.
Or even those names sound funny now. Sister Mercedes. What was that all about?
Yeah, why was she called that? What was? I've never heard of a saint called Mercedes.
Oh, but we digress. Yes, schooling and homeschooling and lockdown. What a season, hey?
Brilliant. Oh, well, I'll let you go because I know you've got to shoot off. But thank you so much for joining me. So people can get you on the courageousmama.com, and
yes,
your podcast is out every Tuesday, and you do a little snippet on Fridays, which is brilliant. And you're parenting for life. Thank you so much.
And if they email me on the Courageous Mama with body rescue plan, I can arrange the discounted price.
Thank you. And you're looking very well. You're looking very good.
Well, can we say why?
Yeah.
I went on your sugar detox. So that was honestly, Christiane, some of those sugar-free recipes, just life changers. It's fantastic. That's really great. And the other thing I loved about, you know, being on it is I know that you do, as you say, you encourage people not to be in a stuck mindset, but you do it in such a friendly and encouraging and empowering way. So, and I got all confused and thought I had to give up tea and coffee as well. So I'm just, you know, I am Mrs. Detox.
Well, you do on the body rescue plan, but the sugar-free challenge is sugar. No, well done. You've done fantastically. Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for that. All right. Been lovely chatting. Take care.
Thank you for joining me.
Bye. Bye.